Welcome to Enabling Buying in a World of Selling. This is a podcast with leaders, thought leaders in my world, and what enabling buying in a world of selling means in their world. If you're curious about the idea behind all of this, check out my book, Enabling Buying in a World of Selling, at enablingbuying.com, where you're actually able to listen to some chapters and pre-order the book today. Let's get into it. So it is my pleasure and honor to introduce Joyce Durst with Growth Acceleration Partners. We've known each other a while, and I don't want to talk about me. I'd rather this be about you. So do you want to give us a quick intro, Joyce? And I'm going to go off video because my internet is very choppy, but you're the most important person on the sea right now.
Yeah, thank you, Charles. And just thank you for allowing me to participate in your podcast. I've now listened to many of them. I encourage everyone to go listen to all of the past podcasts. They're terrific. And you'll learn a lot from every single one of them. So thank you, Charles, for including me. Just a little bit about me. So I'm the CEO and founder of a company called Growth Acceleration Partners. We're a technology consulting, custom software, all AI kind of data engineering kind of company. We help companies really figure out how to use technology for good and enhance or grow or build or modernize their application. So it's been a really fun space to be in. We, in January, will be celebrating our 19th anniversary. And in all, I've been in tech, goodness gracious, almost 40 years.
You and me both, Joyce.
Hey, it's been a fun place to be. At least we could say that, Charles. It's been a totally fascinating, interesting industry every single decade. So I'm thrilled to still be able to participate as the world goes through this transformation with AI.
So let's connect those two through lines. You've just given me something that I really love to pull the thread on, which is we've both been involved in technology almost since, mainframes, at least for me. Were you involved in mainframe technology?
I was,
Yeah.
yes. I know. Don't tell my friends. It's true, though. I was.
Well, it's funny because my view, Joyce, is that it's such an honor to be current. And I've gone through all the iterations of prior to the internet. We had something called local area networks. And then after that, everything got connected on the internet. And then after that, we saw the consolidation of a lot of different hardware platforms. Then we got software as a service, yada, yada, yada. Now we're at AI. So if you think about a parallel thread with selling and buying, there's probably been a similar trajectory of evolution of how people buy differently today than they did. So do you think that might be a good place to start for you to kind of give us some thoughts about that, or would you like to go somewhere else?
No, I think that would be fun. And it is interesting if I go back. I'm not sure, Charles, I know we talked about this. So I'm a computer engineer by education, and my class was the very first class at university to not have to punch cards. All the classes before me had to punch little holes in cards, and they fed them in and they spilled them all over the quad as they were trying to walk to their classes and stuff. Mine was the first one that we actually typed on a tiny little computer screen, and you literally would watch it go across one character at a time. So to be from there to where we are now, that literally I can just speak to my computer and have it generate programs is, wow, it's kind of mind blowing. And I think about that and relating it to, I think in selling, maybe we're going full circle, because if you think about decades ago, a lot of the salespeople that you interacted with were in your neighborhood or down the corner, and they worked at that store, and they knew you, and they knew your family, and they knew your business. And so it really was, I think, a lot more relationship driven. And then we progressed and progressed and progressed till we got to this very noisy world of just everyone selling, telling everyone, here's how many languages I can code in. Here's how many platforms I know. Here's this, here's that, kind of throwing everything against the wall and hoping that the buyer would somehow figure out that they needed something. And where I see you spending so much time, and it thrills me because it's what we focus on here at Growth Acceleration Partners, is trying to go back to a time that really the most important job you have as a seller, that we have as a technology company, is trying to really understand our customers' business, what their problems are, what they need to continue to grow and be more successful and drive more revenue and drive more profits and help their customers be successful. That's, in the end, that's all that matters. And it's cool that we know more technologies than I can even put down on a slide, but it doesn't matter. Clients don't actually care what I have to sell. They like me, but they don't care. What they really care about is they have this problem that needs to be solved. And do I care enough about them that I want to learn about it and learn every single thing I can about it so that I can figure out how to use technology to help them solve it? So I hope that's where we're trying to go back to.
I think so. I really love your perspective, Joyce. And I was about to ask you, and you went there and saved me the question, but I'm going to come back at you with a slightly different question. So the question I was going to ask you is, how are you internalizing this in your company? And I think you started addressing that. But let me pull on that a little bit, if I may, and say you're the CEO of a successful company. And let's then, for anyone who's listening and aspires to be at your level in size and growth and profitability, how can you advise people from what you've learned in your own path to balance the difference? And maybe they don't need to, or maybe they do, the difference between I got to make payroll, I got to put pressure on my sales team to perform, otherwise they're going to gravitate to taking the easy path and not perform, versus buyers don't really care if you have to make payroll. They're probably caring about something completely different. How do you balance the two? And, what's your approach and your advice?
Yeah, my advice for all entrepreneurs, starting out, is you first have to figure out what you're going to stand for. What's your why? You'll hear there's a lot of people that talk about that. Simon Sinek is always talking about, you got to know what your why is. For me, our why is we have a company based on values, and those values are striving for greatness, being agile, which means we embrace change. And the most important one, which is investing in people. And the thing about us and our values, those don't just apply to how we treat each other, our teammates. It's about how we treat our customers and how we try to lift up our communities where we live and work. And if you really strive for greatness with your customers and you really invest in people, then you care about their success as much as you care about your own. So that is at the forefront of every single decision. And we'll make that decision, even if it means for a short term, maybe it sacrifices profit. And I know that sounds unbelievable for a CEO to say, but I believe that if we stay the course, and we've been around for almost 2 decades, and we've proven time after time, if we invest in our own people, if we invest in our customers' well-being and their success, in the end, financially, we come out way ahead. And I think that's what you have to do. And then Charles, I'll go just kind of tie that together with how do we back that up with kind of training? Well, in all the interviews and all of your onboarding and all of training and every single meeting, we start every single meeting with, hey, let's go over with what our values are. Are we living those? Are we standing by them? Are we lifting up people, lifting up our customers? We're making them successful. That you have to do. We also use technology. So with my salespeople, there's all kinds of sales training. We use tools. One of the tools we use is Gong. So at the end of all the sales calls, we'll look at the analysis of each call and we'll say, who was talking the most? Was it us? Was it my account execs, or was it the client? Because one thing I know for sure is that when I'm talking, I'm not actually learning anything. So if we see a sales call and we look at all the questions being asked, how many did our account exec ask? What were the questions? How many questions did the customer ask? We have this short little acronym, old school technology. We write it down on paper, and the acronym is WAIT. And it just stands for why am I talking? And we ask every sales rep, if you're going to talk, then there needs to be a reason, because you should be using that time to ask questions and learn. And the more that the client is speaking, the more that we're learning. And then we actually have a chance to create a buying environment for them, because we could provide a solution that addresses what they've actually spoken about. And so that's how we kind of try those things together, with our value and being intellectually curious and asking a lot of questions, and just making sure we're trying to build trust and relationship with the people that we're dealing with.
So I want to make sure I heard you, because I think you said some really interesting things that others would really benefit from. And that is, yeah, I run a really large company, and I can afford to create values and what we stand for, and I can afford, the key being I can afford. And what I heard you say is, um, that's the future many entrepreneurs want to have, where you are now. So if you are the future, so let me put it this way, get a little metaphysical on you. If you're Joyce in the future, speaking to us in the present, what are you saying to just focus on making payroll and your expenses? And when you get to my size, now I want you to start thinking about values and investing in people and doing all this post-call analysis, et cetera? Or is there a different message you want to give, being this future that we want to get to?
Well, and I think it has to start from the beginning. There were some, in a company, any company that lives on, if you're fortunate enough for to live on for decades, there always comes a time where your principles and values really get tested, for exactly why you just said, Charles. Can I make payroll? And many companies faced that at the beginning of COVID, because there was so much uncertainty, in a different way than today, which there's a lot of uncertainty, but there always comes a time for a CEO when you have to say, I don't know if I can make payroll. So now am I just going to push aside, like, I really am not investing in people? That's secondary. And at least for us, when those times have come, and this is what I think my future self would tell me that I should have done even sooner in my career before this company, is you have to make some bold bets, and you have to push all your chips on the table. This is a company that's bootstrapped. We don't have any outside investors, because we wanted to control the culture. That was the way we believed we would build the right relationships with our customers and our employees, is by living through our values. And there have been times where we have said, maybe against the advice of, financial experts, it's like, nope, we're not laying those people off. We're keeping them. In fact, we're going to go hire some more. We're not going to back away from the market. In fact, we're going to go try and do an acquisition. So at times where people might take I guess what appears the safest financial route, we have said, hey, if we were true to ourselves, true to our customers, true to our employees, what would we do? Typically for us, that means go all in. And that's my future self. I would say it took Joyce a long time to kind of gain that wisdom in her career. My future self would come back and say, young entrepreneurs, figure out what you believe in, and then be bold and stand by it. And that means taking care, more than anything else, more than taking care of yourself, take care of your employees and take care of your customers, which means you have to know both of them. You have to have empathy. You have to understand what they care about, and just be on their side.
Love that. So I'm hearing it's not a magic wand. You don't go from where you are now to being 100 times bigger, let's say, than where you are now. And the through line, what keeps things moving in the direction you want, are your values, are the things. Now, will there be hiccups and ups and downs? Of course, but what's your North Star, and do you keep an eye on that? I love that. So along those lines, you said something that I wrote down: true to our customers. So if you think of a customer, and let's say for obvious reasons, they don't really care about us making payroll. It's like, yeah, they have sympathy, but they're there for their reasons, not to help us deal with whatever anxieties we're going through. How do you help your organization truly appreciate what it's like to be a customer with their own anxieties? And do we care about their anxieties, or are we just looking to make a deal?
Yeah, no, we absolutely, you have to care. I think if you're in a transactional business selling a widget, maybe you don't care. I don't know. I don't have one of those. For my clients, once we win a client, they tend to stay with us on average 6 to 7 years. So I really care about kind of what their success is and the way that we keep our team, because it's hard, especially, you see it in the world today. Oh my goodness, there's so much uncertainty. There's interest rates and there's tariffs and there's inflation going, I don't know which direction. There's AI. Some people say it's taking away everyone's job. Some people say no jobs. I mean, there's just so much uncertainty that companies of all size, but big ones especially, are really struggling with what to do. And you've seen many of them react by, hey, I'm going to save cash, which means I'm going to go lay off about 10,000 people. And many times, many of our customers who've been forced into those really tough financial positions because they have a lot of outside shareholders or investors they have to answer to. We've had directors and VPs come to us from our customers literally in tears on the fact that they had to lay off 60 of their people and 10 of ours. And they're just, they're devastated by having to make these decisions. I make sure our team always understands. We have a lot of conversations about, you need to understand the stress that other human being is under. They work in a big company. They're getting told decisions from on top that they're not going to have to carry out. That person is they're struggling, and we have to be empathetic and helpful and ask them, even when it's hard on us financially as well, how can we help? Is there a different way we can do things that would make it better, easier? One of the things, again, people tend to bring Gap on, Growth Acceleration Partners, they bring us on to work on their most critical business applications that generate revenue for their company. It's the most important thing because that is the thing that connects them to customers. So if they get into financial stress and they're worried about how to continue to make investments in that, one of the things that we've seen in this time of uncertainty is, rather than signing up for a year or 2 years or 3 years at a time, their board might say, we don't know what's going to happen next year. Can you just do, 3 months or 6 months? And we immediately tell our customers, yes, we'll work with you. We'll figure it out how to do these projects in a way that just get you by to the next milestone, get you by to the next kind of, hopefully less uncertainty as we get maybe to next year. And that's what I think every company has to be willing to do, really, from both sides, is figure out how to listen to what, each other needs, so that you can, again, we're trying to get to the finish line together.
Wow. I keep making notes every time you talk. There's so many good nuggets there. I heard something that I'm going to expand on, I think, because it's going to need a lot of thinking. And that is, you know, when we think about the pressures a buyer's under, I wonder as a seller how far we take it. Like, yeah, I got a boss who's on my back to make a deal. Okay, that's one level.
Right.
But there, this that I'd say those are high stakes, but they're not really that big. But contrast that with a buyer who's looking for a solution that's going to prevent their company from going out of business, or is looking for a solution the significance of which will create a new opportunity, something huge. I hadn't even thought about that because we're all trained. Forgive me for saying this because I keep hearing everyone saying it, and I'm like, it's okay to say it, but if you don't know what you're saying, stop saying it almost. And that is, yeah, we're here to find challenges and solve problems.
Yeah.
I got news for you. We've been saying that for 50 years. Dale
Right.
Carnegie said that.
Right.
So it almost makes me think, yeah, and what else you got? Because when we talk that way, we look at our buyers like they're cardboard cutouts. Oh, you got a problem, right? Yeah, I got a solution, right? You want to make a deal? But I hadn't thought about the stress and the humanity involved in buying something that has huge stakes attached. And I'd be curious if you live in that world. Like, is that common for you guys?
It's very common, and I'll give you a couple of different scenarios. One, we have semantics. Words matter, right? Words create worlds, so they matter. So for us, the companies that we work with, we call clients. That's the business, and there are business outcomes and objectives, and that are critically important. The person that we're dealing with, in our cases, a lot of times it's a vice president of engineering or a CTO or whatever. That's the customer. That's a human being. And so if you think of a couple different scenarios at different levels, there are many of these people in the customer position that if this project doesn't go well, they've already told the board they need $3 million and they need, a year and a half, whatever they've told them. If it doesn't work, they're probably not going to be there. Right. So their whole livelihood at this company could be wrapped up around whether or not we help them deliver on the goals that we've set together. And we take that very seriously. This other scenario on the company side, absolutely. Like if the company doesn't achieve its objectives, it's either going to lay off more people, or if it's a startup, it might not get the next round of funding. It might close altogether. So, and for us, it's not, if you take it, Charles, one level down, we really look at what are the problems being solved. We're helping a company that's has a cute little tiny little thermal imaging camera that they attach to an iPhone so that diabetics and doctors can monitor neuropathy so that diabetics don't have to have their limbs amputated. When you get down to what the real problem is, how these companies are trying to help make the world better, then you get very serious about, we got to make this work. There's a company that we're building their software for. They build medical devices that help point the laser when you have cancer treatment. Let's say you have a brain tumor, the machine that points the radiation laser into your brain to treat that cancer, we're helping them rebuild all of the software that makes that thing work. So, when they come to us and say, you need to help us build this because we save lives, that hits us right in our heart. Like we know exactly what that means. So I think again, just taking back to where we started, sellers need to stop trying to sell what they have and understand really what that business they're working with, what is it that they're bringing to the world? And how is that, how does that help people? Because once you really engage at that level, then you commit that, hey, we're not just going to sell you stuff. We're going to be your partner in making sure you get the business outcomes that you need because what you're doing is important.
I think you must have some device that reads my mind because my next question is where you went right away, which is how does knowing that what I'm providing saves lives, or how does knowing as the selling organization, I'm not just talking about the salesperson, I'm talking about growth acceleration partners, the whole thing. How does that change how we sell to a buyer when we truly understand the stakes? Not, here's my challenge, can you solve it? Yes, pay me 500K, problem solved. Okay. I would argue you're going to be a certain way in that interaction, but when someone says it's gonna save people's lives, speak a little more. I think you hinted at it, but speak a little more about what does that do for the selling organization and the seller specifically in that organization?
Yeah, and it's funny, I have a company of 550 people. More than 500 of them are engineers. And so we have this engineering consulting mindset and kind of everything we do, and everyone is part of the selling organization. So as quickly as possible, the account exec will start to introduce the engineering leaders and parts of the team. And we do this the other way as well. So when it doesn't matter to us what kind of customer it is. You could be in the hospitality space, just trying to make reservations work more smoothly. And, when you check into a hotel, great, we would all love that. But we ask the client, because there's only a small number of people involved in the actual sales call, but we always ask the client, hey, will you do 2 minutes on your iPhone about why what you do is important in this company, why your company's mission is important. And then we show it to everyone on the team. And that gets everybody really helping back on the sales process. Hey, we had another client, we did something very similar. Now that I've seen that, let's make sure and share this information with them. We use AI to go back and help us say, hey, here's where we've helped other medical device companies, and here's kind of their experience. Would you like to talk to one of them? Would you like to talk to some of the people that were on that team? As much as we can in the sales process, we now want to use the customer's language, not our language, about their processes and their products and their customers and everything that we go back. We try to continue to tie back, hey, this is so that cancer patient can have a better experience. This is so the doctor that's putting that protocol into the machine, that's much easier, because right now it's very hard to use. This is so, that software doesn't have any errors in it, because you can't afford any errors in this kind of process. So it changes the sales process because it becomes very personalized to what that customer's business, that client, what problem are they really trying to solve?
So in that example where you've got an entire organization, your organization, coming down with all the resources it can to solve this client's problem, how much of that is driven by the salesperson versus the rest of the organization?
The salesperson is the quarterback. So we expect them to be the first in line on the relationship in terms of building the kind of the flow of information back to the rest of the company, building a high level of trust. So because engineers always do, as we have 42 more questions, we go back to the account exec and say, hey, can you get Mark to tell us this? We have these more questions. Are there another person we can get on the call with the rest of us? Because again, we're digging in deep and trying to demonstrate, A, we care, B, we understand, and we're being very thoughtful in our approach to designing something that's just for them. And that helps. So as I said, the salesperson is really the lead in bringing the right parties together throughout the entire process.
Well, and that goes, I think we're super aligned on that, because when we work with organizations, they still question our methodology. And you've given a great example that I want to use when we answer their question, which is, why do we need to get operations involved in the sales process? We can understand it after the deal's closed, but our argument is, actually, if you're in a consultative sell, or if I'm a salesperson armed with knowledge and I'm futuring, meaning I'm going to solve this problem for this client, and I know the solution is going to require all these other parts of my organization, they're going to want to know that before we close the deal.
Yep.
And if they say, well, great, how are you going to put this solution together? And I say, well, I don't know, because I'm not in operations. You've just, in a sense, pointed at something that we think is fundamental, which is, yeah, you've got to involve the whole company in the selling process. And Joyce, what I think people hear is, I don't want to be in sales. So how do you address that if that ever comes up?
Well, it always comes up. All engineers, that's, that was their second words out of their mouth. I think when they were born. No, I don't want to be in sales. And as an engineer who was in sales, I'm sure I said that too. We've just, again, tried to help everyone understand, first of all, everyone's in sales, call it whatever you want to, we're all in sales. But what your job is to really act like an engineer and ask all the questions, because our job on the engineering side is to get as close to possible as we can't ever guarantee success, but we want to eliminate risk. And the way we eliminate risk is we ask more and more questions. And the customer, everyone knows this. Customer talks to sales guy, loves him. Sales guy's awesome. They go to dinner together. They have a lovely relationship, but they're not going to trust the sales guy on, you know, tell me how this thing's going to be architected from the engineering side. So the engineers are like, they're raising their hand. They don't call it selling, but they're raising their hand saying, hey, we really want to get to know the customer as early as possible before it's sold, because we want to make sure we're presenting the right solutions, capability, approach to them before they decide. We want them to have all the information. And so they like being involved, but we call them being consultants, not salespeople, even though they're really just part of they're part of the engineering delivery team. But as long as you're doing that, they're like, okay, I can be a consultant. Consultant's awesome. Consultants they're not salespeople. I'm like, okay, fine, that's fine.
Yeah, God, I'm getting so much wisdom out of you. Forgive me for phrasing it like that, but it's just as you're speaking, I keep thinking of a lot of so whats that I can apply. And I was just thinking in listening to you about the engineers and getting involved in the selling process, you could argue a leader, a manager would say, yeah, you give them all this technical information, but just remember, we're here to close the deal, got to get that deal. And I don't think we want to ignore that, like the sense of urgency, but we got to make sure it lands okay with the client. I don't think customers, as you call them, would appreciate you saying, "I'm an engineer to talk to you, but I really want a deal at the end of this conversation."
No, exactly. Well, and here's the other part again, will sound like heresy, but um, we we're very comfortable telling the client, you know what? I don't think this is the right thing. Like
Yeah,
we don't think you should build a custom solution for this particular need. You should just go buy one. There's third-party applications that do something very similar to this. This is not the core part of your business. You should go buy that. And I think, again, that helps my engineering team know that we're truly with a consulting mindset approaching, are we the right solution for the client? I don't know till we learn enough stuff. If we learn enough stuff and we're the right solution, then we believe in our heart, hey, we are the best possible party to help you get that business outcome you're looking for. We are the ones. And if we're not, we're going to tell you that as well. We don't want to sell stuff. Like, we're not just in the business of selling stuff. That's, again, that goes against what we believe in. So, and there's plenty of opportunities to build software and do data engineering and AI out there in the world. We don't have to force fit things that aren't the right things. So I think that makes it easy for us. The salespeople are salespeople. They want to close deals. Like, they're about closing deals. But if they bring a deal in and the rest of us, as kind of their other side of their tuna box, say, hey, I don't think this is the right thing for us. We're not going to be the best for this customer. Then on to the next deal.
but let me do a little talking for a second because I want to go. So I listened very carefully, and that's very integritous to be able to call it, right? We're not a fit, and there's a lot of good rationale behind it. As a CEO and me, both of us, we run businesses. We know how much damage it can cause our business to get a bad fit. And everyone listening would probably agree. Think about the times you took on a client, either you were in a mode of scarcity and you accepted the client despite the alarm bells, and 2 months in, a period of time in, it really came around to bite you. And now all your profit's gone because you're trying to rescue this client and satisfy them.
Exactly.
And they're still not happy, and you've got to put more resources in, et cetera, et cetera. So that's good rationale for why you should call in the field and audible. This is not a fit. Get that. But let's pull the other thread. Let's go on the other side for a second, because I didn't want to let go of something that I think is really important for people to inquire into, and that is you're a technical resource, so you don't have a commission. check that box. You're a salesperson, you do have a commission, check that box.
Yeah.
A buyer is likely a skeptical buyer to look at a salesperson and say, yeah, they're my best friend and they're wowing me, but at the end of the day, this is a big deal. And if I do the math, that's 100K in that person's pocket. They're going to sell their mother's pearls to get this deal. That's one cynical view.
Mhm.
So what do we do with the person not getting compensated? And, now that the buyer is looking at that person and wondering, okay, do I trust this person? Blah, blah. And I just want to make a comment, if I may, and that is, I don't think it's binary. I think a lot of people, like in the engineer example, probably the worst thing you would be able to say, and it's meant well, but I think it's a terrible thing to say, is I'm just an engineer. I'm not here to sell you anything. So don't be thinking I got any ulterior motives. I'm not getting a commission and I'm not here. I'm just here to give you. If I heard that as a buyer, I'd be like, why do you even have to say that?
Right.
And so then the engineer has to grapple with, well, maybe I don't want to put that out there. Maybe I just have to be neutral and just give them what they're looking for. And I would say that's bad.
Mm-hmm.
Reason I think it's bad is because if that engineer truly believes that what they're saying to this person is going to save all those lives in recalibrating that device to detect tumors, that person maybe, and I'm not saying this is the answer, that's why I'm asking, is I am so honored to be a part of a solution that's going to save lives. And regardless of your decision, I think I can say honestly that Growth Acceleration Partners would be truly honored to be your partner. Now, please don't take that as a script. It's just three pathways, right? One, I'm not selling you because I'm not getting paid. Two, I'm just going to give you the information to do whatever you want with. And three, I'm still going to give you the information, but let me tell you what that means to us. Because now you're enabling the buyer to grant you something versus saying take it or leave it. What are your thoughts around that? I said a lot.
You did. I actually love that approach. One kind of funny story just to back up, emphasize what you said. Many, many years ago, when I was started my career at IBM, I started as a software consultant. So I was in the business of giving technical recommendations to these very big clients. And it was great. It was awesome. As a, young engineer, I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel pretty smart. They keep doing what I said. On one year, on my fifth year in, I guess I switched from being a software consultant to the sales rep on one of those same accounts. The very same day, the client's like, "Oh well, I can't trust that. Could you bring the SE in to tell me the same thing?" And I'm like, "You got to be kidding!" Like I'm the same person that just told you that yesterday. But yes, it's definitely that way. Account execs, salespeople are they because they're paid that way, they aren't and they don't have an engineering background, maybe, I don't know. They're not granted the same level of assumed trust that the engineering side of the house is. I loved your approach on, and I think it ties into maybe we could do it better. I may steal what you just said, but it does tie into when we have our engineering team speak, and this has taken years of work and training, and we do a lot of role playing in customer situations. That helps with engineering a lot because you tend to find with engineers, they're too honest sounds funny, but they're honest without maybe enough tact sometimes. So they'll just go and tell the client, that is thing that you have one to do will never ever work. You should never do it. And I'm like, hey, maybe we could say that in a softer, gentler way.
Yeah, right.
But I get where you're trying to go. And I've not had the problem where they're like, hey, I'm not getting paid, so you don't need to worry. We haven't had that so much. Mainly we have too much brutal, direct honesty.
Mhm.
But the other thing we've really tried to train people to do is, again, just go back to the customer situation and talk about, don't just talk about the engineering facts, because that's what they really feel very comfortable in is, we're going to code these microservices. These are going to be in .NET. These are going to be in React. Here's a very complicated flow chart for you to see what we're going to do. And the customer's like, okay, all right, whatever. Maybe that's good. Maybe it's not. But we've gotten them to say, look, we only want you to now, when you go talk about the architecture of the solution we're proposing, I want you to just use, again, their language. This is the module that controls the workflow for how the protocol for cancer treatments, it starts here. This is the part the doctor interacts with. This part, once we do it, the response time will be 50% faster, really need to be rewritten. And we're going to allow it to now connect with these other applications, which you can't do today in this old technology. In this new technology, we'll be able to connect it to these other 3 applications, and they'll be updated automatically. So no one will have to do data entry for those things. So there won't be any errors associated with that. So again, just working on the role playing to say, look, it's the same engineering solution, but speak to it in a way that connects to what the customer is concerned about. That gives us the trust on the engineering side, and they're not too worried about, the sales commission part. They're just worried about, okay, they're really listening, like, okay, that's what I want to focus in on. And the engineering team is very comfortable taking that approach.
So I'm listening intently. I love the fact that you have that level of rigor in your role plays. I'm respectful of your time, and I know that we could probably keep talking about this. At least
Charles, I'm going to tell you just one quick thing about role plays. You have to, we're an engineering company. We're not always fun, but you have to be fun. We actually took down, in several of our team meetings, we take a cardboard car, and in all these role playings, we say, okay, in this conversation, we'll put the salesperson in the driver's seat and the engineering person in the passenger seat. And then we'll hold up a sign for another scenario. And we're like, okay, who's in the driver's seat and who's in the passenger seat, and who gets kicked out of the car altogether? So you have to do something that people go, oh, I got it. Okay, I'm in the driver's seat in this one. And that's helped us.
Every time, Joyce, I've role played and I've assumed the role of the buyer, I learn 10 times more than I do when I'm assuming the role of the seller. Because in the role of the seller and I'm in front of my peers, they're critiquing my behavior, blah, blah, blah. But in the role of the buyer, the one thing I have more access to that I can never have access to in the other scenario is what it's like to be the buyer. Like,
Yes.
what is that like, right? It's not a technique. And I want to leave you one thought, because again, I am so honored that you're spending this time with me. But it's kind of like an idea that I've been parsing, and you said something at the beginning, which is words create worlds. And the word that came to me recently, and I've been playing with this, is granting. And I don't see that in any of the role plays. I don't see that in any of the sales training. And where I want to go with this, it's probably something I want to incorporate in my own work, but I want to kind of get your view on it and a little bit of your validation, if I may. And that is, I don't think salespeople think about the granting that a buyer gives us. They grant your attention. They grant you a meeting. They grant you an opportunity. And yes, they grant you a contract. And where in your sales process is either an acknowledgement or you truly honoring what a respectful thing that is for another person to do to grant. And that's where I was going with the engineer who says, I'm not here to sell you anything, just the facts, ma'am. Great, thank you, got the facts. And I want you to understand, I want you to know from my heart how much I appreciate you granting us this opportunity to make a real difference in the world. And I would argue that that's not for the engineer's benefit, and that's not for growth acceleration partners' benefit. That's for the person doing the granting. And so if you, as a human being, are acknowledged for what you're providing to somebody, that might, I'm not saying it would, but it might just provide another dimension to this whole buying and selling. What do you think?
I love that idea. In fact, I'm gonna write that one down as soon as we finish here. Yeah, it's interesting. It seems when you say it, Charles, it's like, oh, that seems obvious. Why have we skipped that as human beings? But yeah, I think that's terrific. I'm gonna try
Yeah.
it. I'm gonna try it out today.
I want to hammer it home because I heard something in a seminar years ago about, saying I love you to your spouse. And one argument is, yeah, well, he knows that. I don't have to tell him. But you're missing the point. It's not even that by saying it, you're, making him or her, whoever your spouse is, appreciate you. It's not, that's certainly got some value. But in saying I love you to another person, you're actually creating the experience of love. And so when you say, I truly appreciate the opportunity that you're granting us, I think there's something in this creating a value of the relationship that you have with this person, something like that. I don't know if I totally nailed it, but maybe we can parse that a little bit further.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I like it. As I said,
Yeah.
I've got an opportunity in mind today. I'm gonna try it out because it really resonates. So thank you for sharing that.
And Joyce, yeah, again, I can't emphasize enough how busy you are. And I know that took a monumental effort to make this thing happen. But I would like to, if you have a minute, just to wrap up, by way of wrapping up, what's inspired you? I always like to ask this question so people listening are like, what makes Joyce tick a little bit? Like, is there a book? Is there an experience, something that you can point to? It doesn't have to be one thing that's inspired you.
Oh, so many things and so many people like you. Uh, I love reading books. I always, if I'm in my car, I'm listening to a book. If I'm on a walk, I'm listening to a book. But there was one in particular that I just go back to over and over, and that was a book called The Happiness Advantage by Sean Aker. And it just he, Texas boy, ended up at Harvard, studied neuroscience, but really just helps us remember that being happy is a choice, and being grateful is a choice, and those are choices we should make every single day. So I was grateful for being introduced to that. And then just one tip on stress. People always ask me, you have a stressful job, what do you do? People tease me about this, Charles, but it's true. If I'm at a particularly stressful time, the world is going crazy, we have all of our Gapsters are on Slack, and I literally just randomly pick one. Just kind of scares them sometimes, but I will randomly just call someone up that I probably don't know somewhere in the company and just ask them how they're doing, how's their family, do they have a dog, what are they working on? But for me, it just immediately reconnects me to my why about, oh, there are people whose lives depend on this company, whose well-being is, and their family's well-being is dependent upon us continuing to have this thing grow. And it just immediately re-energizes me on like, oh, I just appreciate this 5 minutes that you took with me. And then I go back about my day. So those two things have gotten me through, I think, many years, whether they've been easy or hard.
Yeah. Well, thank you for giving me some insight into your leadership and your perspective on buying and selling, and more importantly, who you are. And I'm sure your employees are really lucky to have you as their CEO. So I'm going to call it a wrap. I'll turn on my video so you can actually see that I'm.
Oh, there you are again. There's a lovely face. Hi.
Um, Thank you. Really, I know we went over, and I hope that doesn't cause you any distress.
No, it's totally fine.
Thanks for listening to Enabling Buying in a World of Selling. Real talk with people who are really interested in this concept. Again, as a reminder, please go to enablingbuying.com where you can listen to some sample chapters from my book. And if you're interested, you can pre-order a copy for yourself. Looking forward to seeing you soon. And in the meantime, please enable good things.